I will put this into or is very important, which means that at every point in time the device must be compliant and any of these two. So and what again here, the trust type equals intra id join. Hello everyone, compliment of the season and happy new year to every one of you. If you are here for the first time, or this is the first time you are coming across this video on this channel, please do well to subscribe and like and then share with your lovers. Here in this tutorial I'm going to talk about some of the conditional access policy that I mentioned in my previous video. Remember, in the previous video I was talking about how the bad actor can hijack cookie session in Office 365 and use it on another computer, and I specify that some of the way to reduce this issue is by putting up some conditional access policy. So I did not demonstrate those conditional access policy, and I've gotten requests to actually expatiate on that. So I can say this video is a kind of continuation on the previous video. So if you have not watched the previous video, please do well to watch that video. I will also include the link somewhere at the corner on this new video. So some of the remediation or some of the prevention I mentioned in the previous video is, I said you should make sure you still have your MFA in place. I also have a video on this channel where I discuss about setting up MFA and the different type of MFA, the legacy MFA, the modern one, and the conditional access MFA. So you can go through that to have a very good knowledge of what I'm talking about. And if you are still using legacy MFA, I think it's high time you migrate to the modern MFA, because sooner or later that will become deprecated. I think somewhere around November or October this year it will become deprecated. So if you are still on legacy MFA, do well to migrate to the modern MFA. Maybe in my subsequent video I would also show you and demonstrate how you can do the migration very seamlessly. So you can also put in a comment if you really want that to come very fast, but I will have I plan to come to that at some point, so that those that are on the legacy MFA can actually migrate to the modern MFA. But on this video, what I want to talk about is some of the conditional access policy that I discussed, that I said you block devices that are not compliant, and then also set up a location policy. So I'm going to go straight to my tenant and demonstrate how you can set up those conditional access policy. So let's go. So the first conditional access I'm going to set up is the conditional access policy that would block non-compliant devices. So non-compliant can be in a way maybe the devices that are not joined to Azure AD or Entra ID, or the device that are not compliant in the sense that they don't have antivirus, or they don't have certain disk encryption or stuff like that. So those are the device I tagged non-compliant. So I'm going to set up that conditional access policy right now. So here on my conditional access policy portal, so I'm going to go to policy, create new policy. So I'm just going to call it block non-compliant devices. So I'm going to set it to all user at the end of the day, but now that I'm still doing tests, I would need to just maybe assign it to one test user, or maybe group of test user. just to test run. So it's always advisable to test run everything you do on your tenant. And also, when you are assigning the policy to all user, also remember to exclude your break glass account, as they call it, so that you should have at least one global admin account that you can use to rescue anything that can happen at any point in time. That kind of account is not account you usually use for your day-to-day operation. I think you should know that. I've talked about stuff like this in my previous video. So we've assigned it to Adele in this case. So I'm going to target all resources. So I want to target all Office 365 resources. Then I would come to condition. This is where I'm going to set up the policy. So what I'm going to use in this place, I'm going to use filter for device. So filter for device. So I'm going to exclude, because what I want to do is that I want to block. So I now want to exclude certain set of devices from this block policy. So under the exclude, I'm going to say is compliant. So when I say is compliant in this case, so before you can say something is compliant or not, you should probably have set up certain compliance policy on your Intune. So I'm not going to Intune today, but you should know that you should have some certain compliance policy in place. Maybe in those compliance policy you can say, okay, if antivirus is not detected, if the OS is below certain build version, so stuff like that, or maybe if the disk is not encrypted, stuff like that. So if the BitLocker is not enabled on the device, so all those compliance stuff that you need to do. But maybe sometimes I would go into setting of compliance policy, but you should put that into consideration of your filtering here, such that the device must be compliant. And then another expression I want to use here is the device should be Azure AD join. The device should be Entra join. And then if you are using hybrid, we are on hybrid environment, there is a tendency you will have a hybrid join. So hybrid join, so I will put this into all. Is very important, which means that at every point in time the device must be compliant and any of these two. So and what again here, the trust type equals Entra ID join, Entra hybrid join, sorry. So I'm not going to do Azure AD register because that is quite generic, because most of the time when users even just register any devices at every point in time, but most of the time for someone to join device to Entra ID or hybrid join, then that person is an admin in most organizations. Although we have some organizations that allow their users to join device to Entra ID, it's also a kind of a security risk, so it's advisable you limit that to only admin, such that user don't just bring in any devices and then just join into your organization. That is also some of where you can reduce your attack surface, because once bad actor can discover that everybody can join a device to Entra ID, then all just they need is just any user's account, and once they were able to get that, they can join anything to your Azure AD and they can start doing little penetration into your environment. So you should ensure that only admin can join device to Entra ID or hybrid join operation. So here is a policy I have here, so I'm going to say done. Then Under the grant, I'm going to say block. So what have I achieved in this case? I'm saying that any device that is not compliant and that is not intra join should not be allowed into my network. So which means anytime any device that does not meet the criteria, they cannot be joined or they cannot access our resources in the organization. And that is what we have done in this case. So by you doing this, you have actually reduced your attack surface, in the sense that even if someone could hijack the cookie, they cannot use it on any other device that is not joined to your organization intra ID. So that gives you 1 point ahead the bad actor. Although, what of if they steal the cookie and still use it on a device that is joined to intra ID? So that is something to think about, but at least you are 1 point ahead of the bad actor. So someone might now say, in this case, so what of if I have mobile devices? What of if I have maybe users work from home or whichever? So that is left for you how you want to organize that policy. You can peradventure exclude some specific C-level executive from this policy. Maybe you can have some stricter condition or stricter policy you can set on their own devices, as the case may be. But at this point, I'm just showing you what is obtainable. And in another way, this policy can also be modified a bit, at least. Okay, let's say in this case, I want every devices to be able to access my portal. What we can do, instead of blocking, in this case, we can say, okay, you are not going to block. You can grant, right? Then in this case, we are going to make use of this session. So under this session, we can say that the browser should never persist. The browser should never persist, which means that anytime a user sign in to a device that is not intra ID join, the session will not persist, which means that the cookie, the persistent cookie session that is being generated, that the bad actor is using on another device, it's not going to work. It will not work, because even if the cookie is there, the session does not persist. So if you close this browser, then the session become destroyed. Then if a bad actor should steal that cookie, it's not going to work, because it's more or less tied to that session that has been created. So this is something you can also do. So I have demonstrated two things here. The first one, you can outrightly block the devices that are not compliant, that are not intra ID join. In another way, you can allow the device to come in, but the session will never persist, which means that if a bad actor should steal that cookie, it cannot work on another session, because it will be destroyed immediately that session ended. So this is one policy. So I'm going to set up the second policy as well, the one I talked about, you having location based access. Location based access. So what do I mean by location based access? In this case, you are going to allow certain location to access your organization. Let's say, for example, your organization is in US. So you can make sure that you block every other location from accessing information on your portal. If your tenant is in Ghana, or if your user is in Saudi Arabia, then it means you have to allow only Saudi Arabia to access your tenant. So you can ask me, what happened if maybe my user travel to Ukraine, or my user travel to Russia? So if anybody wants to travel, or they want to make such movement to a new location, they should notify you. So when they notify you, then you can create a new policy to accommodate them. So what I usually do in my own use case is that I have this policy set up in most of my customers. Then if we have a new customer, let's say for example the main base is in US, then a customer wants to go to let's say Russia or Australia for vacation, or maybe for a meeting. So we'll get notified. Then once we get that information, then what we do is that we will create a new, we already have a new location that we use for utility changing in and out. Then we have another policy that is handling that. So what we do is that we exclude the user from the main restriction policy and then put the user into a separate policy. You can say, well, everything can look messy, but it is preferable that way. Other things I see most people do is that once there is a request, they remove the user from the main policy, just exclude the user entirely from the main policy. Yes, that also works, but you have entirely exposed that user to a very large surface of attack. Anybody in the world can attack the users. But if you can just pass through the pain of creating a separate policy, at most of the time, although depending on how large your organization is, maybe you can have 20 people going to different countries at different points in time. So you have to manage this. But you can do what you feel works best for you, but just make sure that you put in some of this policy to ensure that you are safeguarding your asset. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a location here. In this case, remember that when I talked about this location based policy, I talked about that I prefer to use the exclude method in this case. So let me just create a policy here. Let me just call it main location. Let me just, so let's say this is our main location. So let's say our main location is in let's say our main location is in Nigeria. So our main location is in Nigeria. So I've just selected only Nigeria. So you can see, although at the top here we have include unknown location. So these are locations that are typically unknown. So but the only thing I've selected here is my location is Nigeria, and I have selected Nigeria from the list. So I create the policy. So now I have a location which is my main location is Nigeria. So I'm going to make use of this location in my conditional access policy that I'm going to create. So let me go back, policy. So create a new policy. Maybe I can call it block location, block or location outside Nigeria. So as I said, you can apply it to a test user. Always do that, apply to a test user first. And I also mentioned, ensure even when you've assigned the policy to all user, exclude your break glass accounts, which is maybe your global admin account. So from there I can say to all resources, which is very important. Then under the condition, I come here on that location. Then under location I select location. Yes, I enable it. So all location, all location, all location. So which I've selected all location here. Then I would exclude my selected location. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to block all location, and I have only excluded my main location that I have created. So under include here all location, I don't care wherever the location is, even you are accessing it from here, it should be blocked. I'm only excluding Nigeria. So I like this exclude way of doing things because it helps me to capture even those things that I don't know. So I only exclude what I know, which I believe is best way to come about some of these things. So I have set my location, then I will go to grants. So on my grants I will say block. I don't care where you are coming from. Once you are not accessing my resources from Nigeria, I'm blocking you right away. So how will this help me? Let's say the bad actor is sitting somewhere in the US and then they stole my cookie session. So once they stole it, if they take it to US and they try to log on into my tenant from there, provided you are not signing it from Nigeria, you cannot access the tenant. Okay, what if the bad actor is sitting right here with me in Nigeria? Fine and good, provided that your device is not joined to my Azure AD tenant, you cannot access my tenant. Okay, I think that would bring in some closure in a way. As I said in the video as well, security is something that is very tricky, and there is no 100% proof security. It only depends on how much the owner of the resources is willing to invest on the assets, or how much the bad actor really wants that information. But provided that the information, or let's say provided it's difficult to make to protect your organization, does not mean that you should not do your bit. So we have done few things here, and these two policy would go a long way to protect our organization in case of so many bad actor devices, or even far beyond protecting cookie as well. So because these two policy is very essential for many organizations, and I think if you want to have any policy at all on your conditional access policy, these two policy is very critical, and you should have them on your tenants. I think I'm going to stop here today till I come your way next time. Be security conscious, and please make sure you subscribe to this channel so that we can bring you more good juice security tips. Till I come your way next time, bye bye.